Welcome back to the Kiwi Wedding Podcast. My name is Lydia and I am your host and wedding photographer based in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. Today on the podcast we have Hannah Duda. She is a wedding celebrant based down in Christchurch and was also recently married herself. This is a big bumper episode with so much amazing advice. We chat through Hannah's love story and her planning process for her wedding. Hannah has an accounting and finance background, so there is a lot of money and budget talk in this one, and I know you guys are going to find it super helpful and love when people are transparent in this area. Hannah definitely has strength in the numbers and admin area, so she was so interesting to chat to all of this about, and she kindly shared a template that she created for her own wedding that you guys are going to be able to use. So I have left a link for that in the show notes, so listen right through and then you can go and download that from Google Drive there. We get into the nitty-gritty of budgeting and all the juicy details, and if you are someone that doesn't want to blow their wedding budget, then there's going to be a lot of advice that you can take away from this one. We also chat through the celebrant side of things, and Hannah has some great wisdom there as well with what to look for when choosing a celebrant, how they can facilitate writing your own vows and creating a really special ceremony experience. I won't try and summarize too much because there is just so much good content in this episode, so make sure you listen right through and go and follow us on Instagram at the Kiwi Wedding Podcast, where you can check out some of Hannah's beautiful photos photographed by the super talented Sarah Clements, and you can find all the vendor details in the show notes and on Instagram too. Enjoy episode 37 with Hannah. Hi Hannah, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today. Super excited to chat to you, and I know people love when I talk to a wedding vendor who also recently got married, and you are a celebrant yourself, so excited to go into all of that.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
So to get started, if you could just tell me a bit about you and your partner, how you guys met and your life together.
Sure. I'm Hannah Duda, and I recently got married to my husband. His name's Cameron Lee. We're both based here in Otatahi, Christchurch. We were both raised here, and we met just over 6 years ago. I was definitely at a point where I'd basically given up. I was kind of like, well, I don't know, just had bad luck in love, I guess. And I was moving back to Christchurch from Wellington to potentially take my business overseas. And about the first week, I think, moving back to Wellington, I met Cam, and our first meeting was actually a few months prior. We'd run into each other at Fat Eddie's, the bar, and I hit on him, but he was taken. So I obviously quickly stepped back and just forgot about him completely. And it was about 4 months later, he came back up to me at Fat Eddie's and reintroduced himself. And he was single. And then, yeah, we just kind of started dating from there. So he's actually a drummer, and he was playing like in the band at Fat Eddie's, and I love music. So it was really easy for me to fall in love quite quickly with his drumming abilities. And yeah, he's in the army, and I was working here on my own business, and we just kind of met, and within 4 months had moved in together, and just kind of things started progressing, and here we are now.
Oh, so cool. Love that story. And can you tell us a bit about your proposal and how that all went down?
Yeah, so we'd definitely spoken about marriage and getting engaged, and I'd definitely been dropping a few hints around what I might want my ring to look like. And yeah, but he'd actually been away on a seniors training course in Palmerston North for 12 weeks. And I remember thinking to myself, he's either going to come back and propose or he'll come back and break up with me because it's one of those kind of life-changing experiences. I don't know if you've like done Outward Bound or anything, but it's what I imagine that being, where you kind of really reflect on your life. And he's getting trained in, army stuff, but he's also experiencing a lot of life kind of lessons. And yeah, and luckily for me, he came home and proposed. So he had planned, or actually, I had planned a trip, which is why it was probably quite surprising, because I had planned the trip to go away as soon as he got home to Lake Tekapo. And he had said, I'll book the accommodation. And I was like, that's fine. And normally Cam books accommodation in army housing. So I was expecting just, your classic army housing or like a backpackers or something. And when we arrived, we just went straight up to Mount John at the observatory, and he proposed like straight away. So we just got off this car ride, and it was great. He lifted me up on a rock, like sat me up on a rock, and then he went to go down on one knee. But then when he went down to go on one knee, he was super low, like couldn't even see because I was up on this rock. So he didn't actually get on one down on one knee. But then yeah, proposed, and I obviously said yes. And then we went back to the accommodation that he'd booked. And luckily he did it in that order, because if I'd seen the accommodation before the proposal, I would have definitely known what was going on, because the accommodation was so nice and had this like beautiful outlook onto the lake, and was, had the hot tub, and it was way fancier than we would ever stay in. So I'm glad that he did it in that order. And then yeah, it was just so exciting, and I just loved calling like friends and family, and telling everyone. So yeah, it was super cute.
So nice, such a cool like reuniting moment that he's come back from this time away and then that
Yes,
happens. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah, it was cool.
Have you always been one of those girls that dreamed about your wedding, knew what you wanted, and yeah, what was the sort of vision in mind when you started planning and choosing a venue?
I wouldn't say I was always like, as a little girl, I can't really, I remember dressing up as a bride one day for it. There's a photo of me actually at preschool, but I don't think I was super romanticized and kind of that thing. But I do love events, and I obviously, as we'll get into, am a celebrant. So I had thought a lot about, oh, I wouldn't do that, I would do that. But when it came time to planning, Cam and I really started from like scratch, I guess. We kind of just thought, like, what do we want? Do we want to elope? Do we want, a traditional Kiwi wedding, or what's kind of the angle we want? And we went through it together, and I actually made like 5 different plans for 5 different weddings, 5 different plans and 5 different budgets for 5 different weddings, because I was really unsure of what we wanted to do, and I wanted to make sure Cam kind of knew what the options were. Um, but yeah, I definitely feel like we made it up based on like us as a couple. I think if you're thinking too much about your wedding before you have the person you're going to marry, it's kind of, like you don't know what their personality is going to be like or what they are going to be like. So it's good to kind of start from a blank slate, I think. And obviously things change, like from what I would have done 5 years ago to now. So you have to kind of just be ready for the trends and what's going to be there when you are getting married.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. And what were the most important elements for you when it came to the day? Your top priorities in terms of vibe, vendors, yeah, all of that.
Mm. I think the number one was we really wanted to have all of our closest people with us. Um, and I think actually making the list of invites is really hard. And Cam and I are both very social, and we have a lot of different kind of groups of friends and people that we, live our lives with us. And I think it was just hard to kind of get that number down, but still feel like we had good representation and have like everyone that we wanted. So for us, people was definitely key. So we weren't going to just have you know, we were just going to do it the two of us. We definitely wanted family and friends, but we still found that process really hard. So yeah, the people were huge, and honestly, I just wanted it to be a party. Like Cam, I met him at Fades. I love a dance. I love a dance floor. I love just having fun and like singing. And so I think for me, as much as I respect the ceremony, because obviously I'm a celebrant, and I know why we're there for our love, it really was important to Cam and I that we felt like we had a really good night. And I'll just preface now by saying, like, I don't drink at like alcohol free. So that didn't necessarily mean, cobering out at the end of the night. It just meant feeling like I had a really, really fun time. So that obviously having people in a really big party determined a lot of other things like venue and vendors and priorities around budget. So yeah, I'd say those two things were our most important.
Yeah, nice. And can you tell me a bit about your wedding outfits, your dress? How was that process, finding it or getting it made?
Yeah, this was honestly the one part that I was so nervous about. I love events, and I love, all the other vendors. I found like in my head, I had millions of ideas. With the dress, I had no idea. I'm not really like a fashion girl. I don't, I'm not very fashionable at all. And I've never worn a dress like that ever. Like, I've never been to like, I've been a bridesmaid. That would be like the closest thing, but even that is just such a massive step up when you put a wedding dress on. So I was quite nervous about it all, and I just think I was really nervous about not feeling good in anything, which I'm sure a lot of women experience, just that real self-conscious and just not feeling good. So I decided to just pick two boutiques that I knew were good and that I'd heard good things about, so Paper Swan and Brides of Miraval. And I just took my best friend, my sister, and my mum, and it was so much better than I expected. I loved it. I absolutely loved being a fashion girl and trying everything on. And yeah, it actually got to a point where I had such a good experience at both of those places. I loved Brides of Miraval. They were just so great to work with, and they can do a lot of custom there. But because I felt quite overwhelmed in the end with choice, I decided to just rule one out and just go, okay, Hannah, you're going to get your dress from Paper Swan. And then it kind of eliminated the overwhelm because there's so many choices out there. And I thought, okay, if I just go with one and then I'll go there a few times and take my time. And so that's what I did. I went to Paper Swan about 3 different times, once by myself, just to really remove any of the kind of stress of having other people there, and just tried on anything I wanted, and just really took my time, I guess, is the answer. And I gave myself a lot of time. So I went, well, I think my first appointment was over a year out from my wedding day. And yeah, I decided on a dress that was not anything I ever would have imagined. I obviously see a lot of wedding dresses and I love them, and everyone looks beautiful with what they choose. And for me, I just wanted something, I guess, that I hadn't seen. Obviously, people would have already seen my wedding photos, hopefully, when they're listening to this. So it wasn't crazy, but it just wasn't what I would have picked. And it's not what I thought or what I've seen before. And I just loved it. And honestly, I'm actually sad thinking that I'll never get to wear it again because it was such an awesome dress. And it was quite big. I guess it had a bit of a big skirt and quite a long train. So it was quite an easy decision for me to get a second dress. And normally, if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, absolutely no way. What a waste of money. You've just spent so much money on a wedding dress. Why would you get a second dress? And as someone who's not a fashion girly, I wasn't really thought I would, have a second dress because it does feel like kind of a cool fashion statement. But honestly, it was purely practical reasons. I just wanted to be able to dance all night long. And after I decided on my dress that's called Georgia from Travail, I just knew that I was not going to be able to dance the way I wanted to dance in that dress. So as much as I absolutely loved wearing it, I just didn't take my veil off the whole time I was wearing it either. I loved being the bride in that big dress, but man, putting that second dress on was so much fun, and it really kind of, I feel like, started the party because it was like, Hannah's got her party dress on. And my second dress was, I don't actually know how you say it, AJE, and I got it on a girls trip to Sydney, very not planned. Not planning to buy the dress. And I, again, absolutely no regrets. And it's, hopefully I'll get to wear that one again. It is white and it does, have bridal feels, but hopefully there'll be an event that I get to wear that too.
Oh, so good. Nice that you just had a really good experience. And yeah, like you say, it can be so overwhelming and there's so much choice out there. But yeah, trying to narrow it down and then just take your time, go a few times. That's great advice. And did you have a bridal party? And if so, how was that process choosing them? Did you find that easy?
No. So as I said, Cam and I, very social. We have amazing friends and we just love all of our friends. And we kind of started talking about it, and both Cam and I, we started making a list, and I was like, gosh, I just feel like I need 10 at least. Like I kind of just, I didn't, and power to everyone that does it, but it just was, you're kind of ranking your friends and it's really hard. And I love all my friends. So for me, we decided two was going to be the easiest. So I have one sister, so it was like Olivia, perfect, she'll be great. And then I have a very, very good close best friend called Claire, who I was her maid of honor, and she's just bestie. So it was like, okay, that's easy. And we went with that. And then Cam was similar. He has like one of his oldest friends, who's awesome, and then has like a really kind of just, they're almost the same person. So it's just, easy to kind of say those two. So, yeah, and I was kind of not nervous, but I was I don't know, I was like, oh, but I want all my girls. Like, I love the idea of just having everyone around me. So I did two things to kind of help with that. One was I invited basically all those 10 girls that or more, there's probably about 15 who I wanted to hang out with me to come to my accommodation the night before and have a real fun girls' night, a chill face mask kind of girls' night. And I also had a lot of them come the morning of as well and be there while I was getting ready and get their own makeup done and kind of still do those really that like fun build up that I love when I'm part of a bridal party. It's such a fun part. So I still kind of got that feeling like all my girls are around me, even though I only like had two as part of my bridal party. Um, and yeah, that kind of just fulfilled my hopes around that. But having two is like such a great number. I think I was really stoked. Great to have my sister and Claire, and yeah, I think it's a really nice number.
Yeah, love that. Definitely a nice number, and cool to just think about other ways you can bring all those other people into your day, like getting ready together. That's a great idea. And you touched on it a bit already, but yeah, how did you find the guest list? Was that quite difficult to narrow down?
Yeah, it really is. And I was someone who, anytime I was giving advice to couples or my friends, I'd say, you just, invite who you want to invite. It is your wedding. And we did do that. But it is hard, I think, without going into too many specifics, it's really hard to know like who's going to be in your life in the future. We had people, three, I think, friends that we invited quite last minute. But they're just new friends, but they just feel like such our people and we just really wanted them there. And honestly, if in 2 years' time they're not in our life, I don't think we're going to regret inviting them. They're still great people and they were an asset to the wedding day. And I keep saying that to Cam when we were kind of, I was like, oh, it's like you just want your friends and family to really provide value on the day. Are they going to enjoy it? Do they like weddings? Are they people? Like I think we didn't want to invite people that were like, oh, why was I invited? Or, I don't like weddings or, so it's kind of like trying to work that out. And we do have biggish families. It's both have split parents. So that always provides different kind of dynamics as well. But yeah, in the end, it was like it worked. And if we could have had 250 people and just invited every single person we know, that would have been fun. But yeah, budget and location would not allow would not allow that.
Totally. And can you tell us about the big day? How did it all go down and any highlights or favorite moments?
Um, yeah, honestly, we didn't put pressure on ourselves and we said if it's not the best day of our lives, that's okay because we've been really lucky and fortunate to have some really good days and to put so much pressure on a day seems insane. But I will say it was the best day of my life. I had such a good time and I don't know, I really have been to a lot of weddings but being like the bride and having all your family and friends around you and marrying the love of your life, it's like, it's going to be a highlight, isn't it? So, yeah, it went really well. We were very lucky with weather. We were very lucky with vendors. I don't know, maybe my coordinator hasn't told me, but for me, there was no hiccups and everything went smoothly. Um, the food was awesome. Yeah, like the games that we had planned that were just a bit different, and the celebrant and the ceremony, my vows, my speech, his vows, everything were just, I loved it. And the party, I mean, the only thing I could have said is I could have gone for like another 2 to 3 hours. I think the buses picked everyone up at midnight, and there were definitely a few of us that could have kept going, but because our venue, which was out in Leaston, which is like a 45-minute drive from the centre of Christchurch, we like needed buses and it wasn't easy to just get a taxi. So although yeah, Cam and I probably, well, I don't know about Cam, he probably could needed to go home at 12, but I was ready to keep partying. But yeah, it just went really smooth. We did a very traditional, I mean, traditional is probably not the right word, standard Kiwi wedding. Walked up the aisle, said our vows, had some canapes and drinks and games and reception and party into the night. So yeah, it was really, really great. Had such a good day.
Sounds so good. Love that it all just went smoothly. And yeah, did you find anything hard about the wedding planning process, or was there anything you look back on and regret or would do a bit differently?
I think I'm really glad I started when I started. I think you can plan a lot well in advance, and then there's like a period of almost 6 months where you don't really do anything, and then like it goes really hard in the last kind of few months. I think I'd because of my knowledge of weddings and being part of some of the planning process in other weddings, I knew that and I was really prepared for that. So yeah, I think my like definite, you know, I'm glad that in that first 12 months out thing, I just locked in as much as I could. I also started, as I said, with 5 different wedding plans, 5 different wedding budgets. And I think I might go into this more later, but when you talk about budget, I think people think it means like, oh, I'll spend 30 grand and that's like a budget. But to me, and I've got an accounting background, a budget is going line by line, item by item, and saying how much these things are going to cost. And I had 5 of those, 5 different scenarios. So I had like 3 different venues, like elopement and a marquee wedding. And I had every line item and I contacted all my vendors to say, hey, how much is this? How much is this? A lot of it I had a bit of a ballpark figure already, but I went through and kind of understood before I locked in anything what it was going to cost. And I'm very glad I did that because we were pretty much to the dollar, you know, like on how much it was going to cost. And I think where a lot of stress sets in for couples is when things start to quotes and invoices start to come in and they're just thinking, oh, hang on, this doesn't add up to 30 grand. So I think part of my planning, which made it a lot more smooth sailing than you know what it could have been, was just having a really clear budget and plan. I'm a spreadsheets girl. I'm organized and I love it. And I've created some templates if anyone wants them, happy to share around that, because I think it can be overwhelming if you're not from the events industry or you're not a planner or a budgeter like I am. But yeah, the planning process was great. I had a checklist and Cam and I just worked through it and we applied, you know, we said who was doing what. I guess choosing vendors was so exciting, but also so scary for me because we have so many great vendors in this industry, and to choose, you know, one for each was so hard. I think, yeah, like Celebrants, I know about 7 Celebrants photographers. I've worked with so many incredible photographers, and we're very lucky in Christchurch with how many amazing photographers we have. Same with everything like video. I think the only thing that was hard but easier was venue, because I kind of said from the beginning I didn't want to get married somewhere I'd officiated a wedding. So I've officiated over 150 weddings and most of them have been in Christchurch. So I had to really rule out, you know, all the vendors, all the venues that I'd been to. And I did that purely, you know, as most like yourself, you'll know vendors, when you've been somewhere more than, you know, 10 times, it becomes more of a work vibe for you. And I wanted to kind of arrive at the venue and be like, wow, like I've never been here and, you know, this is exciting. So Cam actually found the venue. Originally, we had gone for a Governor's Bay location at a community hall out there, but pretty early on found out it was probably going to get ridden off because it's not in a very good state. So then he found another community hall, which is called the Lakeside Soldiers Memorial Hall in Leeston. And it was newly built in 2019. And yeah, I just was like, perfect. It was just ticked all our boxes. It's a community hall, so it's pretty cheap. And it was a cool location that really, I don't think any of our guests had actually been to before. I guess one downside was the bus, but a lot of venues you've got to get a bus out to anyway. But slightly further away for us Christchurch people who are close, you used to everything being so close. Um, but yeah, so the planning process was very much a team effort. I'd say the execution and getting the stuff done was probably more on me, but that was my own problem because I am very controlling and like to do things. But yeah, in terms of picking things and choosing what we're doing, it was probably a joint effort with Cam and I.
Yeah, such great advice.
I think when people are worried where to start, I always say like the date and the venue are the 2 things you just need to get locked in. And the date for us, Cam originally said when we got engaged, but we're not going to get married till like 2025. And we got engaged in 2021, I think, end of 2021. Oh gosh, I should know that. And it felt so far away to me. And I just said, okay, like if that's your, like, sweet, whatever. And I think it was only about 6 months after being engaged, he was like, oh no, that's so far away. I was like, yes, it's so far away. Let's change the date. And that's when we set it for the 6th of January, 2024. And so we had about 2 years of it being engaged before we got married. And it was great. We kind of had a year of being fiancés and then a year of planning. And it felt good. It didn't feel like it was too far away. But I think if he'd had to wait a whole another year, he would have been regretting that. So yeah, the date and venue were locked in first, and then everything kind of just flowed from there.
Nice. Yeah, those are the main ones. And then because a lot of other vendors you can't really book until you have that. So,
Yes,
so
exactly.
good. And yeah, quite a nice amount of time to be engaged to
Yeah.
just enjoy it a bit and
Hmm.
not be super under the pump with planning.
Yeah, it was so nice.
So, yeah, I love that you have got a lot to say with a bit of a finance brain and then have been in the industry also. So helpful. But yeah, we've touched on a bit of that already. But if you're happy to talk about what your budget was, how much you ended up spending, if you went over, or you said you kind of stuck to it, which is rare.
Yeah.
And yeah, even a ballpark figure, just yeah, chat a bit about how you managed that.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess the first thing with, I guess, budget and money is, are you paying for it yourself? And I think, I talk about money all the time, so I don't find it like a taboo topic. I think it's really important that we talk about it. And um, a lot of people aren't paying full for their wedding. They have family helping. And I think that's just really important to put out there, because what you see on Instagram, you might say, wow, like, how do they afford that? Or you might not realize actually how much it does cost, and it might seem really within reach if you see it so much. But I actually can definitely tell you that weddings are very expensive, and a lot of it is not in like your average person's budget. So I've officiated weddings that probably cost 2 grand, and then I've officiated weddings that cost upwards of 100 grand. So I think it's good just to have in your mind, if you're a newly engaged person, just to realize like it's actually a lot of money. And there's obviously ways to completely reduce that and have a great wedding within your budget. But I think having really clear expectations and understanding at the start is super helpful. So I had heard the average wedding was about 45 grand in Christchurch. It does differ, I think, where you are in the country, just based on how much things cost. So in my head, I thought, we can do it for under that. That was kind of my goal. But also very aware that I wanted to have 100 people. I wanted a sit down dinner. I wanted video and photo. And just video and photo can be nearly 10 grand itself. So straight away I knew, okay, Hannah, you're gonna have to really, do some budgeting here. We ended up spending just around about 45. So we were kind of like on the mark of the average Christchurch wedding. And we paid for everything ourselves, but we did get, my mum brought my wedding dress, which was so nice. Not expected, not asked for, but she just offered, which was lovely. And my mother-in-law, Cam's mum, gave us a significant, I guess, cash gift, which was great. And then my dad actually paid for our day after event. I don't know if we've got time to get into all the other things that surround a wedding day, but we actually had about a week of events, and we had quite a big day after barbecue where extra people were invited. So it was actually more than just our wedding guests that were invited, and it was at a venue and had my dad kind of catered and paid for that. So that was awesome and saved us money, obviously. So yeah, we paid for most of it, majority ourselves, and we had saved that before we had to start paying deposits. So I've definitely heard of and know people going into debt, and I'm not a financial advisor, but with my accounting background and being quite passionate about this, I definitely don't recommend that. I think starting your wedding day in debt is just not going to be fun. And we were really clear with ourselves that we weren't going to tick up anything, or we were really clear that if we couldn't pay for it with in cash, we weren't going to book that in. So I guess with my budget, I'd worked that out, and I was sitting around the kind of 40, 44, 45. And then as I went through, I just would adjust quotes as they came in to make sure they were exactly how they, what I'd been quoted, or when the invoice came through, check my budget all the time. Like I was checking it weekly, even like throughout that whole year, basically just making sure we were where we needed to be. And and because we had some priorities like video and photo, that is just a big cost. So then we tried to save in other areas. So our venue was cheap, like a community hall is, I think our one was actually more expensive than most community halls. It was just over $1,000. But as a lot of people might not know, wedding venues are way more expensive than that. So, you're looking upwards of like 4.5 for most, well, for the ones I know in Christchurch. So we were obviously saved there. We, in terms of decor and florals, things like that, we had the amazing Alex from the Flower Press do our bouquets and the buttonholes for the guys, but then everything else we DIY'd. I made our signage and our table numbers, and I collected little jars for the tables throughout the year. So I think decor was somewhere we really saved on, and I I set the theme at the beginning. Cam was, not that he knew what a theme for a wedding really meant, but I said, it's white, which he was like, that's so boring and clinical. And I was like, no, because everything being white is so much cheaper, because it's like, it's just or I should say my theme was like minimalist, because if it's minimalist, it means there's less things, which means it's less money. So I really tried to say, like the tables basically had nothing on them. It was just a few jars of little white flowers, like one stem in each, and the table number. And then once you add the cutlery and the glasses and things like that, it gets kind of crowded once you add the people. So I've got photos that I can send you so that people can see them, but it was very much just like a white canvas. And I love that anyway. I'm quite a minimalist person. So it worked well, but it genuinely, I did that with cost saving in mind. I love the floral. I love the colors that are coming out in some of the weddings at the moment, with just beautiful, but like so much going on. And for me, that freaked me out, because I was just like, oh, like I feel like to make that look good, you need to spend more money, and I just like don't want to spend money, and so tried to save in that area. Our venue was BYO, so BYO alcohol, food, that automatically saves you money as well. And we worked with Movable Feasts, who are incredible vendor down here, who do catering, and they also own Pemberton and Cossars, the two venues. And I was really, I just loved working with them. They have a lot of options. So they have kind of their really high end menu, and then they have literally the barbecue cartel, which is what we did. So you just are getting like meats and vegetables, and it's nothing fancy, but it was incredible. And we had so many people tell us how incredible our food was, which is awesome. So yeah, we really kind of were conscious around that, and obviously alcohol. I was literally searching liquor lands and supermarkets and finding deals. So when Spates was on sale, would go buy it. When Powers was on sale, would go buy it. And actually, it seems like not much at the time, but those things just really add up. And we didn't get the fancy orange juice. We just got like the cheapest orange juice. So, there's little things like that that you can do that help you save. And yeah, in terms of budget, I'm just trying to think of some of the other big items. We did hire furniture, because the community hall furniture, like the tables and chairs, weren't quite what I wanted look wise. But that was kind of, yeah, again, like a priority for me. So I got minimal, but hired some furniture, which was another probably quite big cost on the budget line. And yeah, I think it's just really important when it comes to budget to, there's so many little costs that you don't think about. And as I said, I've created a spreadsheet that has stuff on there, the accommodation, the bridesmaids dresses, the shoes, the hair clips, the getting your nails done, the makeup, the hair. That's just like just the bride and bridal party. And then, buying gifts for vendors if you want to do that, or getting things printed, I'm trying to think of all the little upcoming costs. I mean, confetti cannons. I spent $80 on confetti cannons, and those things really add up. And I think it's easy to just go, oh, food, alcohol, photographer, venue. It's just like, that is such a small, those might be the main things, but it really actually adds up. So yeah, I think we're very happy with what we spent. We spent what was within our budget. We don't regret it at all. Cam even said to me afterwards, because he had mentioned before the wedding that he could buy a jet boat instead. And I said, you could, but I don't want you to buy a jet boat. I want to get married. And afterwards, he was like, I would spend that again to have that night and to have that day. So we definitely don't regret it. But I do think if we'd gone out of our budget or gone into debt, it wouldn't feel as kind of good. And again, giving yourself 2 years to save, or 3 years to save, or however long it takes, I think that's worth it. And yeah, that's my budget chat.
Amazing. So much great advice there. And yeah, so true about all those little things that just add up quickly and are often forgotten. So we'll definitely share those templates. I think that'll be super helpful for people. And did you guys go on honeymoon straight away? And what did planning that look like?
Yes, actually, I should say that that money includes our honeymoon. I missed that out. So we budgeted that in as part of our wedding spend because, yeah, that's just like a whole nother cost. And obviously, honeymoon's very much optional. You do not need to go on a honeymoon. But I'd heard from my friends that going away and just getting out of, the city and kind of going somewhere is really nice to have straight after your wedding. So we decided to stay in Aotearoa because so many people come here for their honeymoons. We thought, let's stick around. And we went down to Arrowtown and actually stayed at Millbrook, which is a beautiful resort that is definitely not cheap. So we did 3 nights and that was all we could afford. But I'd actually got return flights to Queenstown from Christchurch, honestly, like oh no, would have been like 11 months out from the wedding for $69 return. So I was very happy with that saving. And so we got to fly down and we just got picked up and lived a very luxurious life for 4 days, played a bit of golf and just enjoyed ourselves. And again, absolutely no regrets. It was so nice just having time to ourselves with no real plans. I'm a planner and I really tried to withhold planning our day out. And we just did what we felt like doing and enjoyed the beautiful views and serenity that you get down in down south in Arrowtown. So yeah, that's what we did for the honeymoon.
Nice. Oh, such a beautiful spot. Millbrook's definitely special. I've done a night there before on a Queenstown trip, but yeah, such a just like living in luxury. So a really nice little getaway. Were there any helpful websites, apps, or different resources that you used during the planning process? I imagine you already had a lot of connections, so maybe didn't need vendor recommendations and stuff. And then your spreadsheet's super helpful. But yeah, anything else you can think of?
Yeah, I did use the website Say I Do. I think I paid about $150 for their kind of premium access, and that's how we did our invitations and our save the dates. And it's also behind the scenes an awesome planning tool. So it actually gives you a checklist and it reminds you of like when to do things. You can manage all your guests RSVPs and also do your seating plan through their platform. So $150, again, that was definitely in the budget, and it actually saved us because we didn't do physical invitations. So for me, it saved us a lot of money anyway, and it was worth the spend. It did our wedding website. It's how we communicated with our guests. So I really did actually find that quite helpful. I did quite a lot of research into the different options because there are quite a few options. And yes, Say I Do really ticked my box, like all the boxes that I had, and it was a super helpful tool, especially with guest management, like RSVPs, dietary requirements. I actually did like a wee questionnaire on it and asked people what they thought they might drink just to help us with our choosing what alcohol we were going to have. And I also got people to request like a song that would get them on the dance floor. So it's quite a cool tool to just manage all of that. I am so glad I didn't do it just like via email because my inbox is already crazy. So to add that would have been hectic. So yeah, Say I Do, and then yeah, just a really good spreadsheet. I with the vendors, obviously I knew all the vendors, but for people that don't, a lot of vendors have their own recommendations on their website. So for example, my makeup artist and friend Stacey Banfield, who's incredible, she has a great list on her website who she's worked with. So if you do know one vendor that you love, it could be worthwhile looking at who they recommend because they've worked with each other, which you'll know as well. Like if you're working with people you've worked with, the wedding day just is smoother and everyone vibes and it's great. So if you've got a makeup artist or a venue or a photographer that you love, I think looking at their recommendations is always a great start. And yeah, obviously Instagram these days is just so helpful. I think going to, finding a wedding that you like the look of and just looking at all their vendors and who they used, I think is a great way to do it.
Yeah, so good. I don't know if anyone's mentioned that Say I Do one yet, so that's good to share. And yeah, definitely asking your vendors for recommendations. It's a really good one. And just people that are at weddings week in, week out know what they're like to work with. And you've given so much already, but is there any other advice that you would give to couples that are planning their wedding at the moment?
I feel like I have so much. I think like keeping good open communications between yourselves, like as a couple. I think I've met couples and I can just tell like that they are not on the same page. And I think it's, you want to start your marriage off in a happy place and you want to feel in love and you want to feel, just really not stressed or annoyed at each other. So I definitely recommend just keeping it fun and happy and just always remembering why you're there and what this is about. I think couples can get very caught up in, especially with social media, in like what they're meant to be doing or what people expect them to do. I think really any question or decision you're having to make, just make sure you go, well, what do we want? Like, what is our favorite thing, or what will make us happy on the day? Because I saw on Instagram, I definitely can't claim this, but I saw something about how you shouldn't be acting like hosts at your wedding. You should be acting as guests and enjoying it. And I think it's very easy in the planning process to get so caught up in what other people need. And I found myself doing it. I was definitely not immune to it at all. And I'd go, oh, but we have to do this because, you know, dun 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 needs this thing. And we'd constantly go, well, hang on, no, that's like not our problem. Like, we're throwing this party, people can come to it and enjoy it. It's, their own choice. So I think it's very easy to get caught up in things that really don't matter. And you just have to keep coming back to that. It's about us and it's our wedding and it's what we want. And, people are here for you. So if you prefer to have no, I don't know, alcohol at your wedding, or you prefer to have no meat at your wedding, or you prefer to have no dance floor and it's just that's the end of the night. It's whatever you want. And I think, yeah, just try not get caught up in the trends and social media.
Definitely easy too, but that is great advice for people and a good thing to keep coming back to for sure. And what is married life like now? Do you feel like you got any of the post wedding blues?
I was very aware of this post-wedding blues. I had been told by many brides and friends that, it's like you work up to something and then it's just done. So Cam and I were so like conscious of it and just constantly thinking about it. And I think one thing we did that really helped is we did have a bit of a wedding week. So, our wedding was right around Christmas time. So great because everyone's on holiday. Lots of people were. And we had a pre-event on the Thursday night and we had everyone invited and a lot of people turned up and it was just a great time to kind of see everyone and catch up because we had people from overseas. So it was just such a great time to kind of connect with everyone, and I really felt like I got some good conversations that night, which then took a lot of pressure off me on the wedding day. Yeah, so Thursday night we did that. Because my maid of honor was from France, she coming from France, we actually did a bit of a hens do for me on the Tuesday. So Tuesday, a bit of a hens do, and I don't drink, so there was no risk of me being awfully hungover, or hurting myself. So we did a hens do, which was great because I got to see all my girls and like it was such a fun event. I got to dress up and it was awesome. Then the Thursday night had the pre-event. And then the Friday is a really, I guess, fun day because you're kind of setting up and you have your bridal party around you, and we had a bit of a dinner at my accommodation with all my friends, as I mentioned earlier. So that was kind of this great event as well. And then obviously the day of, which was full on, the wedding, everything was so fun. And then the Sunday we did a day after, which was just so great. It was just such a good debrief. Anyone that I felt like I hadn't spoken to at the wedding, I could go and speak to. It was really felt like a real good family time as well. We had lots of cousins come that weren't at the wedding, so it was just really cool to connect with everyone. And I think because we had done that, by the time we got to our honeymoon, we were like quite happy that it was done. We felt like we'd done everything we wanted. We felt like it was finished, and there wasn't this kind of like, oh, like it's done and it's over and we're sad. We were actually so happy and just so excited to be married and to tick that off. So I think, yeah, to hopefully mitigate and not get the blues, I would suggest trying to do more things, just see everyone and hang out with everyone, and also just be aware that it is a thing, and that if you do experience that, just have something else to look forward to. We're very lucky. We've got one of our really good friends getting married this weekend, so I get to do it all over again, and it's not even been 2 months, so it's great.
Oh, so good. That's a great one to just kind of stretch out the celebrations if you can, and be able to have those chats with like every single guest, which is sometimes hard to do in one day. Is there anything else you want to add about your own day, or we'll go into chatting a bit more about the celebrant side of things?
Yeah, let's move into celebrant stuff. I'm sure it will come up again, my own wedding.
So good to have both perspective. If you could just tell us a bit about your background, how you got started being a celebrant, and yeah, sort of the journey of what's led you to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So I guess have a background in business. I studied law and accounting at university and started my own businesses straight out of uni. And something else that I was probably the only thing I excelled at school was public speaking and talking and being a chatterbox, which some would say isn't a strength, it's a weakness. But yeah, I just have always been quite confident with speaking publicly, and also I'm about 98% extrovert, so just thrive being around people. And because of that, I had been asked by quite a few friends and through different events through work to MC events. So I was going to be MCing one of my friend's sisters' weddings actually, and we are sitting around talking about it, and she just kind of said, "Gosh, like I just can't find a celebrant that I can connect with, or that's appealing to me, or exciting me about them being my celebrant." And I kind of thought, oh, yeah, there's not many kind of young celebrants out there. This was nearly 7 years ago now, so it's quite different. About 7 years ago. And yeah, and I just thought, I wonder what entails becoming a celebrant. And because I have this kind of legal background, I love admin. Like admin is my favorite thing. So I looked into it, and it really was just like a lot of admin. And obviously there's a bit of a legal process there around, officiating and helping people get married. And I said to my friend's sister, I said, "Hey, I can just become a celebrant and be your celebrant." And she was like, "Great." And that was probably about 12 months out from her wedding. And I went through the process, did the admin. And by the time I actually officiated her wedding, I'd already officiated 6 other weddings because as a bit of a business background, I just turned it into a great side hustle and thought, I'll make a website. I'd done that before for other things, make an Instagram, just actually embrace this new qualification, or no, certification that I have, and make the most of it. And so I think that first season I ended up doing around 10 weddings, which is nothing now, but for then it was kind of cool because I was new. And yeah, ever since have just kind of built it as a side business. It's never been my full-time thing, but I love it. I love. I just really connects with me because it kind of combines so many of my favorite things like people, public speaking, love, and just hearing stories and meeting new people. So it just was such a good fit, I guess. And yeah, now I'm 7 years. This must be the seventh season of officiating weddings, and I don't actually know the exact number. I kind of flippantly throw numbers around, but I know I'm up in the mid hundred, like over 100, between like 100 and 150 or something. So yeah, lots of couples.
Oh, so good. So interesting to hear that story. And you definitely sound like the perfect person for the job, just the, yeah, mix of your background and personality and everything. So love that. Can you talk us through a bit of the process of what it looks like to, yeah, work with a celebrant kind of leading up to and on the wedding day for couples?
Yeah, sure. So normally you'll contact the celebrant. It's not, as you said earlier, it's not really worth contacting them unless you have the date and the venue, because we can't necessarily say yes unless we know that. And there is a bit of a vicious cycle happening at the moment where people are getting booked out very early and earlier, and it's kind of just leading people to make requests very early. Most vendors now are starting to say, hey, let's hold off at least 18 months before the day. I'll pencil people in, but I won't lock them in until we're more around that 12-month mark. And yeah, so via email, I usually get contacted. That's my preferred way of contacting me. And you can find celebrants, on Instagram, websites, but there is just a literal list online. It's called the Gazette, and all registered celebrants are listed there. But you can't really see much about them. So websites and Instagram and things are probably better. And yeah, I get an email. We arrange for a catch up. And that catch up is really in person, ideally, and it's when you just get to know them and make sure that you vibe with the celebrant. And obviously the celebrant's making sure they vibe with you, because I think that's the key, is you actually just want to make sure you get along and you enjoy talking to each other and you feel comfortable with each other. So that meeting happens, and then usually after that is when you'd kind of decide if you're going to lock them in, pencil them in. I send my couple my terms and conditions and usually a deposit invoice. And then honestly, there's not much to do because usually that's about 12 months out. So it's not until a bit closer to the time that I would either have a second meeting with the couple if the first one didn't cover this off, which is just really getting into the nitty gritty of how they met, their story, their personalities, what they've been doing since they met, their life story. And I also send a questionnaire. And that just gives me a great understanding of who they are as a couple and what type of thing they want in a wedding. And then I'll write a draft script. The draft script will get sent to them. They'll look over it. Some couples just go, yep, perfect. And others have lots of feedback, which is totally fine. I always say, like, my main concern is that I don't want couples cringing at their own wedding ceremony. So I hate, I want to make sure I'm using language that's really similar to them and it suits their vibe and it's actually something they would say. And yeah, and then kind of once that's finalized, the celebrant will let you know when to apply for the paperwork, and everyone kind of has their own way of doing that. But the paperwork must be applied for by the couple. I've heard some horror stories about celebrants doing it, but that's legally not allowed. You need to apply for it because it's like a legal document. So you apply for it online, which is great, because when I first became a celebrant, you had to do it in person. So you had to actually go down to a registry, like the BDM office, and apply for it and do the paperwork. Whereas now it's all online, which is great. And it just gets emailed to you, which is also great. And yeah, and then there's a few obviously emails back and forward, but the next big thing is the rehearsal, which is one of my only rules, is that we must do a rehearsal. I love rehearsals. I think it doesn't have to be at the venue. It doesn't even have to be the day before. It just needs to be the couple and the celebrant, and they just walk through what's going to happen, because on the day, nerves set in with the couple, and they sometimes honestly forget how to hold hands, or like things can just, that you thought you knew naturally how to do, can just completely go right out your head, and you're like, wait, what, how do I hold your hand? Or it kind of, to me, the rehearsal is about running through it so that you automatically do what you're meant to do and hold hands, and how you're going to kiss, and when do you walk down the aisle. And I love a rehearsal because I'm super planned person, and I just love to feel like I know what's going to happen on the day. Dream scenario is that it's at your venue and it's at a similar time to your wedding, so like 3 p.m. before, the day before or something, but not necessary. And ideally anyone that has a role in your ceremony is there, but again, as long as it's the couple and the celebrant, it's not necessary. So yeah, but I love a rehearsal. And then normally the day of the wedding, I get there about an hour before, because it's great to just be there well before guests arrive, make sure my speaker's working, make sure that everyone knows what they're doing, talk to the other vendors, and just really kind of settle in. And normally the groom and the groomsman, or whoever's going to be there before the ceremony starts, are there as well. And then guests start to arrive. And for me as a celebrant, I take on the coordination and running that whole period of the wedding. So from when I get there until basically the photos start, I am there to make sure everything's running smoothly. So I don't just show up and say my bit and leave. I make sure, people are seated where they need to be seated, that the vendors are all happy, and just coordinating the whole thing. I think, is what I guess I bring to the role, and that's really important to me. So yeah, and then after the wedding, I mean, most celebrants will leave. It's lovely to invite us to have a drink. That's so nice. And to talk to some of your guests, but we won't be staying all night, And I mean, I've done that when I'm a guest, but not when I'm just a celebrant. And yeah, we'll normally leave just as the photographer starts to get that group photo going, leave you a card with your paperwork in it, and off we go. And then I do follow up with my couples, ask them to see some photos and a review, which is great. And always obviously just checking in to see how everything went. So yeah, that's the process of a celebrant.
Cool to hear. Yeah, for people to hear that, because I don't think everyone knows how that all works. And yeah, you sound amazing how you handle everything. I've photographed hundreds of weddings as well and had many different celebrant experiences, but you sound like a great one to work with. Yeah, I thought we'd chat a bit about the vows portion. I know that some people like to write their own vows. Do you recommend this? Or if couples choose to do that, do you kind of give them a bit of guidance to facilitate that and make sure they sort of match up and that whole process goes well?
Yeah, I think it's really up to the couple. I think I'd say most of my couples have written their own vows and write them separately as well. So they're a surprise to each other. I personally love this. This is what Cam and I did.
Mm.
It was so fun to hear him say vows that I didn't know what they were going to say. And as a celebrant, if the couple's going to do that, I do get them to send them to me and I look at them. And basically, what I'm doing is making sure they are similar-ish in terms of structure. I always say it's totally fine if one of you's like the jokester and goes a bit funny and the other one is a bit more lovey-dovey because that's your personality. So you don't want to, shut that down just because it's you want to be on the same tone. But I think what's really important is that they're the same length. And I think that's actually what I stress more than anything is just, hey, if you're going to write your own vows, start to talk about a word count because if one person reads, two A4 pieces of paper and the other reads a paragraph, it's very obvious and actually quite awkward.
Mm. Yeah.
So I think what's best to do is I send them, I've got a template, I guess, like to just give them a bit of a structure, but I also have examples. So I've taken some real life examples, moved them around a little bit, taken the names out, but just so that people can see what vows look like. Because I think if you've never been to a wedding, even if you've been to a lot of weddings, there's a high chance you actually can't remember what the vows were.
Mm.
So I like to show examples and I guess, just quickly, like the normal structure is like a bit of an intro of like, I met you. When I met you, I knew that I was in love with you because you played the drums and you were beautiful. And, you kind of say like, oh, it was so fun. And we met and that's what happened. And this is why I love you. I think sentences are like, I love you because, and, you make me feel loved when you do this. And then you kind of move into like the promises or the vows themselves. A lot of people these days use the sentence I promise to rather than I vow to, just because it's a little bit more old school, but it's totally up to you. And then it's literally like I promise to, I wish I could remember some of my own vows. I promise to support you in all of your hobbies. And I actually listed some of Cam's hobbies because he is a absolute he's famous for how many hobbies he has. And there's actually a photo from our wedding ceremony where he's like giving knuckles to his best man because his best man's who he does all his hobbies with. And I said I'd support them and, be supportive of those. So that was a great thing for him to hear. But yeah, you just say promises, and then there is a legal line that you should include, which is a celebrant will tell you about, which is the kind of one thing you have to say. But yeah, to not go too much into vows, I would just say, you don't have to say them. I think people, and then this next question I know is coming up that's kind of about this, but you don't have to speak really at your wedding. You can get away with saying like one legal line and an I do, and legally you are married. And I think for some people who are the opposite to me and are not extroverted and do not want to public speak, it actually makes me sad thinking how nervous they get, and you can actually remove those nerves by just not doing it because it's your wedding and you can do whatever you want. So I would, if you're feeling very nervous and it's actually going to actually ruin your happiness on the day, or it's going to be something you're thinking about a lot, I highly recommend talking to your celebrant about the bare minimum. And that doesn't mean you don't love your partner and that you don't absolutely adore them and are stoked to get married. It just means that you've got a lot of people have in some social anxiety and don't like speaking in front of crowds. And I've seen couples do really cute things where they write their vows as a letter and they read letters to each other, or they read each other's letters on the day, or they actually do a private, intimate moment at the wedding at some point where they read their vows away from everyone else. So I do recommend doing what suits you. A lot of couples, I know a lot of church weddings, they actually just read the same generic vows to each other, which are beautiful, and there's no harm in that at all. So you could also ask your celebrant if there's like a kind of more generic thing that you can just both read to each other that tick the vow box, but never interpret that as meaning you don't love the person or you're slacking off or whatever, or you don't care. It's actually just totally understandable that not everyone wants to speak in front of everyone.
That is great advice. And yeah, that was going to be the next thing, but you've covered that well. I've had quite a few people saying lately just how they're quite nervous about the day, and especially the ceremony part. And yeah, maybe they do have some of that social anxiety, or they're not confident public speaking, or even kind of like spilling their heart out in front of that many people, even if it is their family and friends. It's just can be quite intimidating. So yeah, those are some great tips. And yeah, anything else around like staying calm and feeling confident on the day?
Yeah, I think when you're saying your vows and when you during your ceremony, it's amazing how you can just kind of feel like it's just the two of you and the celebrant. So really like looking in each other's eyes and just trying to kind of really connect. It's actually quite amazing how the audience can just disappear and not really feel like they're there. So on the day, I would just, take lots of deep breaths. I always have the vows written out word for word. Never try to remember something off by heart at the ceremony. I never would do that, even as a celebrant who's confident. And I think, yeah, just really realizing it's just about you too. So you just have to do whatever suits you. I actually do remember a very specific groom who I met well over a year before his wedding, and he was so nervous about doing a speech, and we were sitting there talking about it, and I could just see how nervous he was. And, this is 12 months before he's going to have to do it. And I just said to him, "Do you know that you don't have to do a speech?" And the look on his face was like, "What? I don't have to do a speech?" And I was like, "No, you don't have to do a speech." And his wife, or fiance at the time, was sitting there, and she's actually super confident and like was totally capable of doing a speech. And she goes, "I can do the speech. You don't have to do a speech." And the look on this guy's face was like such relief. And I just thought, oh my goodness, that there's people out there that are so stressed and don't realize that they actually don't have to do any of that. If you don't want to do a speech or vows, you don't have to. And you just talk to your couple about it, your wife or husband or future partner, and just discuss that, because there's no need to get so scared about something, because the day needs to be fun and exciting. And if you're going to have that much stress, there's also the option of I've seen couples not use the microphone. And as long as your witnesses can hear you, which just put them in the front row, you don't have to have this booming mic, because sometimes a microphone can be really intimidating to people as well. So yeah, just know that you can do whatever you like. Deep breaths help, and just keep looking into the eyes of the one you love, and hopefully they'll calm you down a bit.
So good. Yeah, that's great advice. And yeah, we have given us a lot already, as I've said. But yeah, is there any other advice that you'd give to couples planning their wedding from that kind of celebrant's perspective?
Yeah, I think to add, I just talk about vendors a little bit. Vendors know what they're doing, and vendors are the professionals, as long as you're not getting someone it's their first time. But I really put a lot of trust in my vendors. I was very quick to get a wedding coordinator. So usually a wedding coordinator is someone who doesn't plan your wedding, but they help you in the lead up with a few tips and tricks, and then they on the day coordinate. And a lot of venues have this person, but if a venue doesn't, like mine, I highly recommend. It's so worth the money. It's the best money we spent. Kate and John from Soiree, which is a company here in Christchurch who do events, they were just so great. And what you do is you basically work with them on a run sheet, and they just make sure that run sheet runs. Because I don't think people realize how, if you don't have someone doing that, it's not actually up to the caterers, it's not up to the photographer, and it's actually not even up to the MC. The MC, especially if they're not like a professional MC, which some people you can pay people to be your MC, but if they're just a friend or a family member, it's not their job to make sure your wedding runs to time or runs to the plan, unless you specifically ask them and pay them to do that. So I think a coordinator, to me, just was so helpful in everything. And when I was planning my wedding, I was writing down all the little jobs that I'm lucky enough to know that pop up, because I've been to so many weddings, and just would write Kate's job, Kate's job. And that was what I was, paying her for. And it's just so nice, because I think, yeah, it's just really important to kind of have someone there that knows. And yeah, going back to the vendors, just trust your vendors. Like, your photographer knows what time you should be taking photos. They know what the bus light is. Like, I didn't have anything in my mind about where I wanted to be, where I was going to take photos. I think some couples get very caught up, like, oh, we'll do the family photos behind that bush, in front of that bush. I want a photo in front of that thing. Unless you're a photographer, you probably don't actually know what like the best positions are. And I just fully trusted Sarah Clements, who was our photographer, to just tell me what to do. And I'm so glad I did, because I love my photos and I have no eye for that kind of thing. And same with food, they know how much food people eat. They know how much drink people drink. I followed exactly what Sarah, Sarah is also the name of the person from Movable Feast who I was dealing with. She told me what to budget for alcohol in terms of how much people would drink. She told me how many canapes, all of that. And I just trusted her because they have done so many weddings and they know. And unless there's something really strong that you're really strong about, then, stick to your guns, but also just realize that their advice is probably a lot more based on experience than your own. So trust your vendors and also choose your vendors wisely. It's very easy, especially around the budget piece, to kind of just go for like the cheapest option, which I'm not saying that that's not a good option, but that's not necessarily always the best option. And I'm very happy that I went with the vendors that I knew were going to vibe with me and that were just going to do the job that I wanted. So yeah, trust your vendors.
Yeah, that is, yeah, gold piece of advice. Yeah, I know we're biased being wedding vendors ourselves, but yeah, you do just have that experience. And yeah, that has come up a few times about a coordinator as well. And I think, yeah, such a important point person on the day to help everything keep to time running smoothly, and yeah, not have your friends and family or your bridal party running around doing like all those little jobs. Super important one. And then yeah, photographer as well, of course. You're like, oh, I really want a photo here, but it's like, oh, it's going to be bright horrible light and
Yeah.
shadowy faces. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
all those things that you might not think about. Just trust your vendors is such key advice. And in terms of a celebrant, do you have any sort of like green flags, things to look for that yeah, what in your opinion makes a good celebrant?
Yeah, I think someone who's very open to the couple and what they want. I think, I've just said trust your vendors, but I do think with a ceremony, there isn't any right or wrong way. There's obviously a way that lots of people do it, and it does work nicely that way. But if you want to do something like pop champagne halfway through your ceremony, cut your cake in the middle, not say vows, not walk up the aisle, have 5 dogs there, that kind of thing, to me is, it's your wedding, you do you. And I think some celebrants can be quite strict on how they do things. So it's good to find a celebrant who's open to what you're looking for. And it's probably quite good to be quite clear in that first email if you do want to do anything that might be considered outside the norm. And I just think, looking at their social media and their website, even asking a couple that had them, it's pretty obvious who I've married if you look on my website, because people are good with reviews, but it's very rare, sorry, that a vendor's going to put up bad reviews of themselves. So I think doing a little bit extra investigation around a celebrant is helpful, because even though I've just said it in my recent Instagram post, even though they are a kind of small part of your day, it's a very intimate and very important part, and it can set the tone of your wedding. And I think, yeah, I guess everyone's different, and everyone wants different things in their celebrant, because we're all different humans. And I think it's just someone that you vibe with and that you actually would want at your wedding as a guest, even though we don't stick around for the whole thing. We're actually there talking to all your guests. I mean, I do because I'm a guest bagger, but before your ceremony, I'm walking around meeting people and talking to your guests, and you want that vibe to be good, and you want them to get along, and yeah, and I think green flags are just celebrants that are open to what you want and are very kind and friendly.
Yeah, such great advice there. And from being to so many weddings and then planning your own as well, is there anything that you did in terms of planning the timeline of the day, or any tips around that to make it more enjoyable so you're not so stressed or rushing to the next thing?
Yeah, I definitely think, again, having great vendors so that there was just nothing for me and Cam to do on the day. Like, we didn't lift a finger, and neither did our family and friends. And that was actually really important to me. I've been to weddings where the family are doing a lot. And just as a personal value of mine, I was so excited for my family to just be relaxed and enjoying themselves. And you know, I didn't want my mum like handing out canapes, or like I wanted the vendors to trust them and for them to do their job, and for my guests and family and friends and everyone to just enjoy themselves. So I really did think about that when planning the day. the minimal jobs I could give people, the better. A shout out to my friend Shannon, who was my MC. She really stood up and took on some extra jobs that probably weren't in the well, they were on the run sheet, but probably weren't what she thought she was signing up to, like taking my dog to the kennels. But that's that's great, and it's obviously your friends and family are happy to help, but the less jobs I could give them, the better. And again, Kate and John from Soiree, they really helped me with those little odd jobs. And I guess the timeline, you I also love when I'm an MC, I try and not ask the couple questions. You kind of want to know, want to ask all the vendors first and get make sure we've checked with everyone that no one knows what the answer is, and then talk to the couple. So ideally, almost kind of telling your vendors that, like, hey, I've made this epic run sheet. It's got minute by minute what's happening. Ideally, you don't have to ask me like what's next. And I guess that's with the planning and the timeline, is just actually having everything planned out. Feels a bit extreme, and for someone like me it comes naturally, but others might be a bit like, oh, it's quite a lot. But it just means that there's no questions for you. And it was actually my friend Caitlin, who got married a few years before me, that I saw her this clear file that she had, and I was a bridal party. And so anytime anyone had a question, I was like, have you looked at the spreadsheet? Like, have you checked the run sheet? Because it's all there, and it's so easy before the wedding to think about those things, but on the day it's just hectic. So you just want one source of truth that has everything there. And I had included things like all the vendors' phone numbers and names, the timings of everything, a bit of a plan of like how everything was meant to be laid out, just in case things, I don't know, changed. I talked to Kate about what weather options looked like, just so that if anything came up on the day, no one needed to ask me or Cam, and it was actually just done for us. And I think because of that, it just meant we had the best day. And I honestly don't think anyone asked me anything. I mean, the vendors asked me if I wanted a drink and things, which was great, but no one came up to me and said, oh, Hannah, what are we doing about the flowers that are out on the plinth from the ceremony? Are we bringing those inside? And obviously, those things, there's so many things to think about, which feels very overwhelming. But we had it all written down, and it was explained to everyone, and we knew who was doing each job. And yeah, it's full on. Again, I think I've got a template on like a run sheet, and it includes every little detail. So yeah, I highly recommend just being as detailed and planned as you can be.
Such good advice. And yeah, it's all those little things like, oh, when are we moving the flowers or whatever, that might not seem like a big deal, but it's kind of annoying or a little stressor when you're the bride. So just removing all of that is so important. And then, yeah, if you're not like an organized person, that's not your strength, then highly recommend using a coordinator or someone to help you create that run sheet. And yeah, obviously just lots of communication with your vendors, and then yeah, so you can actually just be present and enjoy the day. Amazing. This has been so great to chat to you. I know that everyone's going to get a lot out of this, but yeah, is there anything else you want to add as we wrap up about your own day or as a vendor?
Yeah, just enjoy it, be in the moment, make sure you take time to like talk to your husband or wife or partner that you've just married, because I think it's very easy to get away on you. And Cam and I had said to each other, let's try stick together and make sure we're not just like separate for the whole day. That's probably one big tip. And make sure you eat your food. Oh my goodness, try all your food. I was so sad I only got 2 out of the 5 canapé options, and I wish I'd told someone. That's something I missed, was to like make me a little plate of one of each so I could try them all. Eat your cake. Yeah, make sure you really experience it as like a guest would, and don't feel like you need to like miss out, because yeah, it's your day and you've paid for it and you've planned it. So, really enjoy yourself. Yeah, I think that's kind of my main tips. I am posting a lot on my social media coming up on each kind of topic. So if you need any more kind of insights, feel free to find that. But yeah, just enjoy it and do you, and do what you want, and don't kind of let anyone else pressure you to do anything that you don't want to do. I had my mum and dad walk me up the aisle. I wrote my own reading at my ceremony. I kind of, there were a few things that people were like, oh, it's a bit interesting, but we just did it. Pam wanted a cornhole tournament, so we had a full planned cornhole tournament for all our guests, like a full schedule and everything. Yeah, we just kind of did our own thing, and I absolutely have no regrets.
Oh, I love that. So cool to talk to you. And yeah, we'll definitely link your Instagram, share some of your photos or your vendors and those resources in the show notes as well. But yeah, thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks for chatting.